Rajyog. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Sache Sukha Swarupaya Swami Tapaharine. In this Siddhi part, powers, we covered up to Sutra number 44. By now you must have understood that spiritual life is not that easy as we normally take it for. Normally, we think that if you take Lord's name and if you try to dedicate yourself, it's more than enough. Actually, it's not. Those of you who have studied Sri Ramakrishna's biography in detail realize that the spiritual practices that Sri Ramakrishna did, or those of you who might have studied the life of Lord Buddha, the kind of spiritual practices he did. Normally, we think that they were masters, they had to do so much. No, it is the other way around. To reach the state from where they could do this kind of sadhana, they required many births. We have definitely devoted many births in preparing ourselves. Otherwise, you would not have been listening to these talks. But what Sri Ramakrishna did, or what Lord Buddha did, or what others did, everyone has to go through the process. Very important. Let that not put you off, because we are capable of that and we will have to do that. And there is no shortcut in spirituality. Now, as you start doing whatever path you may take, it does not matter what path you are taking, you will have similar powers. Slightly different it might be, but the powers will be there. And once the powers are there, they are like side lanes. You are traveling on the main road and suddenly you take a side road and you don't even know where that side road is taking you. I remember one incident. Once I was moving in Himachal and we were supposed to go to a hotel. And by mistake, we took a side road. And it was already dark. The Google map was showing our place of stay a little ahead. And when we reached there, we found that it was someone's house who had mischievously put that as this that using that name. Now there was no way we could return. We had to go, and it was around 8 or 10 kilometers up. And it was so difficult, and we did not know the path. And it was scary. Anyway, finally, we reached a height where there was a temple, and there we could take a U-turn and then come back and then again proceed on our path. And whomsoever we asked, he told us, how come you took this path? Actually, this is what happens when you get tempted. You don't even realize that you have completely gone off track. And the time that you waste on traveling on the wrong route, the same time is required to come back. That is why it's very important that you know about the powers. And unless you have acquired some of these powers, you won't know what lays ahead. Mundaka Upanishad has very beautifully said, Pariksha lokan karma chitan brahmano. You should know, you should examine, you should go deep into what this universe has to offer you. The empire of mind is a huge empire. It's next only to God. Whatever it has to offer, you have to know. Otherwise, something fresh comes and you will get tempted. Patanjali, he was great scientist of mind, and he had collected everything that was available in those days about yoga practices and mind, and says soul swarup सूक्ष्म अन्वय अर्थवत्व संयमात भूत जय. You need to conquer the elements, the five forms of element that abound this universe. You need to conquer. How do you conquer? You have to know their nature. Unless you know the nature, you cannot conquer them. So Patanjali gives a list: the gross form, the finer form of the elements, then their essential traits, and the inherence of the gunas in them, and on their contributing to the experience of the soul. So here is this pen, my favorite example. So this pen, it has a gross form, it has a finer form, it's formed of finer elements, the five elements, and it has essential traits. It has certain traits, certain characteristics, and there is an inherence of the gunas in it. And finally, its contribution to the experience of the soul. So, for example, they say that earth element is the grossest element uh, that we experience. Its chief characteristic is smell. It says earth element has 11 traits, 11. Like it has shape, and there's a majesty about it. And it's dry, rough, and one can grasp it like that. There are 11 traits. Similarly, the jal, water element, it has 10 traits. It has fluidity. It has some kind of luster like that. Through meditation, when you focus on all this and the utility that these elements have, you master them. Swamiji says that this kind of meditation is taken up by certain sects of Buddhists. By time of Patanjali, Buddhists were there, and they were India. India has been into meditation, and there are many aspects of meditation that we have experimented with, and that's how we know. So Swamiji says they take a lump of clay and make sanyam on that, and gradually they see the finer materials, and from there slowly they go back, and back. Finally, they master it. So what happens if you master it? How does it benefit you? Well, when Einstein found out that matter and energy were related, E equal to mc square, although he did not know, but scientists, even in his own time, they found that if matter and energy are related, they are one and the same, and atom bomb can be created out of it. You now have the power over matter, you have power over energy. And scientists did not stop there. From there, they came up with hydrogen bomb. And in a hydrogen bomb, first you need to explode an atomic bomb. And with the energy released by that, then only hydrogen bomb can be exploded. No, your head reels when you listen to all this. Your head reels. Unless you know an object, you cannot have mastery over it. Once you have mastery over it, you can manipulate it in any way you like. Once you have mastered the five elements, tato anima adi pradurbhava kaya sampat tat dharman abhighatascha. Once you have these, once you have mastered these, all kinds of powers, these powers are known as siddhis. These siddhis you get. Normally, when you go through our scriptures, you find there are 8 kinds of powers. Those of you who are interested, because Asht Siddhi, 8 siddhis, the very popular. First is Anima. Anima is the most popular ones. Anima, you become very small. In Valmiki Ramayana, we come across character of Mahavir Hanuman, where we find that he made himself very big when he wanted to cross over the ocean. And once he reached Lanka, he made himself very small. This is what they say, Anima and Mahima. These are the technical. Anima, you become very small, smaller than an atom. And you can become very big, Mahima. Because all elements will now obey you. Those of you who might have studied Gita 11th chapter, there you find Lord Krishna appears before Arjuna in his cosmic form. So it is within the powers of the Lord to become huge. It is within his powers to become small. Any yogi can do this. Well, this is what yoga philosophy says. I have no personal experience of this. I don't know anyone, any yogi who can do these things. These things are there in tradition. If they are in tradition, unless you can disprove it, it's better that it stays the way it is. Agnosticism, where you say that I don't know for sure if it is true. There are different kinds of arguments that we use in life. For example, there is deductive logic, there is inductive logic, and that famous example of inductive logic, that 1 crore, 2 crores, 3 crores, they are all black. That means that all crows are black. It's a very famous example in inductive logic, but no, there might be some white crow. Surprisingly, the advancement in human knowledge has come entirely because of inductive logic. Deductive logic, where you see something and then you deduce, because in deductive logic, usually I am saying it is about the past. Inductive logic is about the future. Now, when you are predicting the future based on some observation, as science mostly does, the possibility of going wrong is very much there. There's no doubt about it. But that is how we have progressed. Problem lies when someone who claims himself to be a scientist, and nowadays most people claim themselves to have scientific temper, whatever they mean by that, God knows what they mean by that. And when they affirm something, they say this is absolutely true. And when they negate something, they say that this is absolutely true. This is where lies the problem. To be truly scientific, to have true scientific temper, imagine a line at the both end of which lie 2 holes. One is complete negation and there is complete affirmation. There is a line. Till you are moving on the line from 0 to 1, rather 0 to 0 it is. Because think of a graph, x-axis and y-axis. One side it is complete negation, another side it is complete affirmation. Real scientific temper means some element of unknowability must be there. It's probabilistic, where you say that, well, from the available data, we more or less feel that it is like this. When you're absolutely sure this is right, know that you don't have scientific temper. And when you say this is absolutely wrong, again you don't have scientific temper. That is why when science poo-poos religion, poo-poos God and yogic powers, they don't have scientific temper. And we definitely don't believe them. We have no faith in such scientists who can go on saying confidently about anything. See, when we talk about mathematics, which is considered to be the most sure thing, if you just read the history of mathematics, you will be surprised that during the time of Pythagoras, when someone came with the idea of negative numbers, that person was killed because natural numbers were considered to be perfect. There are many stories about it. The idea of zero. They had strange ideas about these things. So, even in mathematics, you find that, and so many mathematical theories, for example, Ramanujan in India is considered to be such a great mathematician. He gave so many equations. Now, many mathematicians have tried to find proof of the equations that he has given. Because he used to say that the village deity, she used to come in his dreams, and give those equations. And now many equations have been found to be wrong. When they try to prove it or disprove it, they found that they were wrong. Many equations have been found to be absolutely useless. So mathematicians, they go on shouting and jumping. It's not that. Life is not about surety. No, it's not. So simply because I don't know about anima and mahima, no, it does not mean that it doesn't exist. There might be somebody who has these powers. And when there is a country which has such a long tradition, such a powerful tradition, the land that produced yogi like Buddha and yogi like Krishna, you cannot say that these things are not true. So anima is when you have the power to become very small. Mahima is when you become huge, like Mahavir Hanuman crossing the ocean. Then there is Laghima. Laghima is when you become very light. You can float on air. And then there is opposite of Laghima, which is Garima. Garima is you become very heavy. There are stories about some of these yogis when sometimes they became very angry and they sat down somewhere and they could not be lifted. There have been many such stories. There was this Trilanga Swami. He had many yogic powers, and normally he never expressed those, but there are many stories about him. But when it comes to stories, again, the same thing happens. But why should somebody make stories? Nobody is making stories about my yogic powers. If I had yogic powers, people will maybe add some zeros to it. If it is 1, they might make it 10, they might get 100. But if it's 0, you can go on adding 0, nothing comes out of it. Then there is prapti. Prapti is you are sitting here and you can extend your hand to touch anything you want up to the sky. And then there is prakamya. some wish arises in your mind and it gets fulfilled. Now, this is something I have seen with many, many monks, with myself, with my friends, and with my seniors. They wish for something. They wish for something and they find that it gets fulfilled. I have seen it happening so many times. Unusual things, not ordinary things. Absolutely unusual, unbelievable things. Now, I may not be sure about anima, lagima, mahima, but as far as prakam is concerned, I know it happens. Then there is ishitva. Ishitva is when you get control over others. You have such yogic powers that you get control over others. And there is a vashitva, where you can influence even the king. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that if you start loving God and you're deep into devotion, then people will listen to you. Not in those matters, in general. And say that people come under his control. Sri Ramakrishna is saying people come under his control. And he was telling it to M. Mahendranath Datta, Master Mushai, who noted the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And Master Mahashay, he was having problems with his wife. And Sri Ramakrishna turns towards him and says, even his wife. Wife is someone who cannot be brought under control like that. They have an independent mind of their own. So he says that if you develop devotion for God, you can influence the minds. You can influence the minds of scientists, politicians. Normally, when you have these 8 kinds of powers, they appear magical, but they are not really magical. These are the natural outcome of your sadhana. You have been doing spiritual practices, and through those spiritual practices, you have been covering miles, reaching milestones. Meditation means getting certain kind of knowledge, and knowledge is power. You get these kinds of power, and once you get these powers, you know that, well, you are definitely different from the common run. Once you know that you are different from the common run, your faith increases. Swamiji had very beautifully said once, you have come to realize God, at least see a ghost. Why? By seeing a ghost, you will have conviction that there is a world beyond this gross world. When you have these kinds of powers, then what happens? Rup, Lavadi, Bal, Vajra, Sanganatwani, Kaya, Sampat. A yogi can have such power. Swamiji says, a lion will sit at his feet like a lamb. Not only that, there will be a glorification of the body. The body becomes indestructible. And beauty, complexion, strength, and adamantine hardness. Yogis can make themselves so hard that even if you go on hammering on his body will not break. For such a person, there is no disease, no death, no pain. They have conquered everything. When you read the Upanishads, sometimes they talk on these lines. These appear metaphorical, but these are not metaphorical. It actually happens. Yogis do get these kinds of powers. And that is why many charlatans, they try to ape these yogis and try to get some money. Then comes a very interesting discussion. Next sutras. Now, sutras, if you take them separately, meaning will not be clear. The idea is that here I am and here is the world. When you take these things together, the entire thing together, then you realize here are the objects. My senses act on the objects. And the senses bring the information to the mind. Mind is not self-illumined. It gets the light of consciousness from pure consciousness, that is Purush. A yogi's mind has become very powerful. As explained, it applies itself to the gross elements, gets power over it. Now he applies the same power on his own sense organs and he gets complete mastery over sense organs. And then he applies his mind on his mind, his concentration on his own mind, and he gets complete power over it. What kind of powers that we shall see? So it runs in 3 stages: objects, senses, and mind. Grahan, Swarup, Asmita, Anvay, Arth, Vatva, Sanyamat, Indriya, Jayah. If you make Sanyam is high level of concentration, which we discussed much earlier, on the objectivity and power of the illumination of the sense organs. An object is here. Here is this pen. Now, unless I see it, this pen has absolutely no value as far as I am concerned. Now, yoga is discussing only yourself. Yoga is not concerned about those grand ideas and grand theories about idealism and realism and objectivism and subjectivism. Here I am, I am true for myself. Here is the world, and this world is true for myself. Finished. There is an object. The object comes in my vicinity, or I go in the vicinity of that object, and then my sense organs shoot out from my mind, grasp that object, and bring the information to the mind. Now, this itself is a very complicated thing. That science says that light falls on this pen and it gets reflected, comes to our eyes, creates sensation, and it goes to our mind. That's absolutely true. How does mind know? Mind has to know. How does the mind know? There is no answer to it. Actually, science has no answer to it. In spite of all the fame that science has absolutely no idea about what is knowledge and how one gets knowledge. In Yoga Vedanta tradition, we are very clear. The sensation comes, mind becomes active, and it sends its messenger. For example, imagine you are in your house and doorbell rings. And you ask somebody to go see who that person is. Mind works exactly like that. Sensations coming through as light, sensations coming as sound waves, sensations coming as touch, whatever sensation. They are like doorbell ringing. And the mind sends respective organs to see what it is. Respective organs, they themselves do not have the power to know. They see, they inform. And the mind goes through its existing data and then decides what it is. These things we have discussed earlier. Those of you who have not listened to earlier talks, please listen to our earlier talks. And what happens then? If you apply your mind on the objectivity, so here is this pen, and my mind has an objectivity towards it. It's trying to grasp power of illumination of the organs. So object gets illumined by our senses. If I don't have a sense, for example, there is a visually handicapped person or with hearing impairment, even if there is sensation, he will not come to know about it. Senses have to illuminate them. Unless senses illuminate them, we can do nothing about it. So, illumination of the organs on egoism, the inherence of the gunas, because everything begins from sattva, rajas, tamas, and then comes egoism, and then comes the organs, and slowly it moves. And you apply your concentrated mind, starting from the objects, to the senses, to mind, to egoism. And those things get illumined. They reveal their true nature. Now, what happens when you, for example, supposing you have taken mantra in Shiva tradition and you do Om Namah Shivaya. And you have been doing Om Namah Shivaya the way your teacher taught, with fullest devotion, with fullest concentration. You too will have these kind of powers. Not directly in these stages. Sometimes, as I mentioned, that I have seen monks who have this power of prakamya, wish fulfillment. They say something. I have seen this happening so many times. Just to narrate one very simple thing. One very simple incident I'll tell you. When I became a monk, I was a young brahmachari. And the custom is that you put on your dhoti in a particular style for 1 year. Just the way people put on dhoti in North India. With a part of cloth tied in your back. After 1 year, that thing is dropped. We say that the tail has been dropped. And then you put on dhoti the way you see us in pictures. When my so-called tail of dhoti dropped, Swamiji, Srimad Swami Chandranandaji Maharaj, with whom I had grown up, I went to him seeking his blessings, and I was trying to be a little creative. I told Maharaj, bless me that the backside of dhoti that I had to tuck, I may never have to tuck again. I was being creative. Essentially, it meant that I am new into this field. May I never move towards the world ever again. Well, that's a sign that you are living in the world. So Maharaj laughed at me and said, what kind of language you are using on such an auspicious occasion? Of course you will not have. Anyway, that made me very happy because I was very young and monastic life is such a difficult life. People can't even understand the kind of problems that monastic life has. It's phenomenal. Now, after that, I was selected by a senior monk to perform Durga Puja. Now, in Durga Puja, you have to tuck your dhoti in the backside. But something went wrong, and he decided not to take me because I was coming away from that center next year. So he was going to get me only for 1 year, so it was dropped. That means that thing was dropped. Then there was two more occasions when, as per the instructions of the higher ups in my organization, I was supposed to do that tucking. Something went wrong. Something went wrong, and I did not have to do it. And once I was sent to do puja, and when you do puja, you have to put that on in the bags. So I was wondering that, okay, fine, now what happens? When I went there, I found that, no, I was given the responsibility of being Tantra Dharak, that is superintendent of puja. And there you don't have to worry about this. So, see, I myself have seen this. People may not give much credence to these stories. But there were 3, 4 occasions when I had to, by the instructions and orders of my higher ups, to tuck my dhoti like that, which is a very normal thing. Like if you watch Durga Puja, you will see the Brahmachari Maharaj performing Durga Puja with dhoti tucked behind. That's the normal dress. But because I kind of asked for blessings on the most important day of my life, because I always thought that the most important day of my life is the day the tucking drops. Even today, I consider that day to be my real powerful day, much more than even my sannyas day. Because that day I finally felt freed from the world, absolutely freed from the world. After that, it's just normal process to me. Well, you can say it was all coincidence. 3 or 4 times. But unusual. Absolutely unusual. This is just one story I told. I have hundreds of such stories. So Swamiji says that these powers come as you focus on objects, as you start focusing on the organs, because they are the instruments. Says, first you conquer the objects and then you conquer the organs. Now when you conquer the organs, what kind of powers you have, can you imagine? Swamiji says, take up a book. Take up anything that you see or feel. A book, for instance. First, concentrate the mind on it, on the book, and then on the knowledge that is there inside the book. Now, if you concentrate on the knowledge of the book, you will gain the content. You will gain the knowledge of its content without reading the book. Can you believe it? But this is true. I know of one monk. I'm not sure because this story was narrated in front of me. Now, I don't know if you were joking or not, but we have one monk, he is still alive, who is not very learned. And one senior had told him, you don't have to study. If you want, you will gain the knowledge of the book. And We have heard in his presence that he just laughed. Story is true. Now, how it came to be, I don't know. So he had once been to a very senior monk's room, and there he picked up one English book. And he said, does this book contain, is the subject matter of this book so and so? So that monk, the senior monk was surprised. How come you know? And then he laughed and says, by the blessings of my seniors. Now, I don't know whether he had heard about that from someone, but that's a very interesting story. I had heard it in public, and that Swamiji was present there. And he would have contradicted if it was not true. He was honest enough. I don't know. Of course, through practice. Now, if you have the practice, personally, I don't have to read books in detail. No, no more. I don't have to. But it's not because of yogic power, it's just through practice. So, reading one page maybe in 30 seconds, 35 seconds is very normal speed for me whenever I am reading a book. And if it's stories and novels, it becomes first 20 pages is okay. After that, around 20 seconds, just 20 seconds per page. So every minute I cover more than 3 pages. But that's more because of practice, not because of yogic powers. What Patanjali is saying here is that your yogic powers become like that. You take up a book, focus on the book, and then you think of the content of the book, and you gain the knowledge. This is what he means to say. Tato manojavitvam vikarana bhava pradhan jayascha. So from that comes to the body the power of rapid movement, like the mind, power of the organs independent of the body, and conquest of nature. You get different kinds of powers once you have conquered your organs, because you can separate yourself from your organs from your body. And you can move as fast as your mind. Like if you wish to be on the moon right now, you can reach the moon right now. Because you have freed yourself from the shackles of the organ and the body. Once again, I'll tell you, I have not seen such powers, but I have seen certain other powers mentioned here. And as far as you, dear listeners, are concerned, it is for you to decide what you will take and what you will not. So objects, and then organs, and then ego. And finally, mind is pure sattva, because mind has become free. Mind has become completely free of objectification, sensification, and egofication. Mind has crossed these 3 stages, and now it becomes pure, absolutely pure. So there is this junction of pure consciousness as mind. Now your focus is applied there. It's like searchlight, you are applying to different areas. And once you can apply the focus there, all knowledge gets revealed. After all, if you remember, why Purush and Prakriti come together, says that for experience. Those of you who might have read my book, Tia, A Parrot's Journey Home, then you will see. Somehow you see, even when I was young, as a monk, or maybe even in my college days and student days, I never had this idea of sin. Somehow it was never. I never had, somehow, now that I'm talking for the first time, I'm thinking, looking back at my life, I never had this idea of sin. What is sin? I never had this idea. And once I became a monk, after that, I never was swayed by this idea of pap and punya, virtue and vice. I had read these books, but when I was reading Tia, I was writing Tia. I was not swayed by these feelings, but overall those feelings were there. So to me, everything is an experience. There is no good, there is no bad in the universe, and it is a fact. Because these terms like pap and punya, the terms like dharma and adharma that we keep coming across, in Hinduism, these are just words. Words to denote detour. And as far other religions are concerned, we are not even bothered because they don't deserve this kind of attention. As far as higher religion is concerned, and when it comes to this kind of understanding, it is beyond them. Because when a teacher, when one sage, when one master says that do this, you will always have this power of virtue and sin. Hinduism is different. And that is what, if you go through my books, you will see. There's nothing right, nothing wrong. These are all experiences. If you like something, even if that's wrong, for example, a person who takes to drinking. Now, whether drinking is good or drinking is bad, that's not the issue. Thing is, if you like drinking, you continue to drink, and there are consequences. If you don't drink, then there are consequences. If you smoke, there are consequences. If you don't smoke, there are consequences. Nothing more. And then a time comes when you decide that, no, you won't drink or you won't smoke. You go on. Same about vegetarianism. It's everything is same. There's no sin, no. And somehow, by now, of course, I'm totally fixed there. Nothing can shake me. Nothing can shake me. My conviction has reached that level. That even if God comes and tells me that, well, Samarpanananda, you are wrong. There is virtue and vice. I'll say, God, correct your ideas. I've reached that level of conviction. Nothing can shake me from that. These are all experiences. And Yoga says so. That the junction of Purush and Prakriti, it is for the experience. How can you have Papa and Punya? Out of question. It's nothing. And then you realize everything is knowledge. Sattva Purusha Anyata Khyati Matrasya Sarva Bhava Adhishtha Tritvam Sarva Gyatrittvascha. You have mastered the elements, you have mastered the senses, you have mastered the ego, and now remains the junction, where you distinctly see this is mind and this is pure consciousness. There is a junction, you apply it, get knowledge of the whole universe. You were as if reading word by word. You were reading as if line by line. Now suddenly you are reading the entire book in one go, simultaneously. When we were kids, there used to be bioscope. So you saw those pictures moving in bioscope. Just seeing one picture at a time. Take the whole lot out and in one go you can see. Natad vairagyadapi those bija kshay kaivalyam. Freedom, kaivalyam comes when you give that too up. You now have mastery over the entire world because you know the entire world. You have given that up. That is when you attain aloneness. Not loneliness, alone. You know that you do not belong to this world. And independence. You are now free. The powers, you kept on gaining powers only to be free. Under normal conditions, these powers bind you, as they say. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. But in yoga, absolute power frees you completely. Become free. Free. Because everything is dream. Dream like. This world is all dream. It's all mental. And these powers, whatever kind of power, they're just like dreams. Why hold on to dreams? Why? However good or bad. Why? Why? Swami Upanimantrane Sangasmaya Karanam. Now, if you hold on to these powers, there are other dangers. The gods and other celestial beings, they don't want you to be free. Once you have these kind of powers, they come and tempt you. We have these famous stories like story of Vishwamitra and many other sages. When they were very powerful, the sages would send some kind of problem. Not only females, there are other kinds of problems too. In Tia, there is like last chapter, Land of Eternity. There I have narrated how Tia is about to be stuck up. In Lord Buddha's life, we see how Mara came with different kinds of temptations and fears. Comes. Only when you are totally free, totally pure, absolutely unselfish, only then you can go through all this. So more interestingly, next sutra says, Kshana tat kramayo sanyamat vivekajam jnanam. According to you, time is physical and it flows. Now, if you focus on particle of time, kshana, particle of time, like seconds, second, and its precision and succession. If you can do that, you get complete discrimination. What it says that this pen is here and now. After 5 minutes, this pen will be here, not 5 minutes, say 1 second. Pen will be here, but will have moved away in time. Can you imagine? Einstein gave this idea of time and space, time as fourth dimension in 20th century. Patanjali has given it 300 years BC, before Christ. Time as the fourth dimension is mentioned absolutely clearly in yoga, and it's imperative. Unless you understand time as the fourth dimension, you cannot be a yogi. Says that similar objects, we have similar objects. You see today as something and tomorrow as something different. When you see something tempting, you can see it as a worthless thing if you can see that thing in, say, future or in the past. You can say, I can apply my imagination. No, imagination doesn't work. What works is Shana Tata Kramayo. When you apply that concentrated mind on the changing time that is changing, the flow of time, its precision, its succession, then you get the power where you can perceive things as in different time frame. And that is when you realize that it's all useless. Think of your friend whom you love a lot. You are growing, that friend is growing. You want to get out of it. You try to imagine bad things about that person. That doesn't work. But if you have actually seen the bad things, bad habits of that person, then your opinion may change about that person. In this, your mind changes completely because you can clearly perceive how that person was in the past, how he will be in the future. Because as time changes, fourth dimension is added to it. The object keeps changing. The object in the preceding second is not the same as now and will not be the same as in the succeeding moment. And then jati lakshan deshay anyata anavachedat tulyayos tatah pratipatti. Things that cannot be distinguished. How? Through species, through sign, place. Even they will be discriminated by the evam sanyam. For example, they say that the gods cannot be differentiated. They all look the same. They say that the difference comes because of jati, lakshan, des. Our Vedanta also puts some quality. Normally, if you want to differentiate something from something, these are the three: jati, lakshana, desh. This pen is different from this microphone. How? In species they are different. Similarly, in space they are different. And one pen is different from another in its quality. So sometimes they appear as jumbled up. If you can get this kind of power, the jumbling is over. So Swamiji gives the example, cow is different from the dog. One cow. Now, if two objects are exactly similar, then you can differentiate through their different locations. They're in different place. But if somehow there can be a situation where there is no way that you can differentiate, because you got that unusual power, absolutely unusual power, where you can differentiate in time. Normally, time is something which is not taken into account. But this pen, 1 second earlier was something, 1 second later it is something different. And so you can differentiate. And then you realize that all this is useless, not for me. The goal is to know that everything is a compound, everything is complex. I need to be established in the simple, in pure consciousness. Tarakam sarva vishayam sarvatha vishayam kramat cheti vivekajam jnanam. When you have this discrimination, complete discrimination, then covering over all knowledge gets removed and you know things the way they are. I don't want this. Because this is the knowledge that takes one beyond birth and death. Entire knowledge now comes in one go. You are freed. Sattva Purushayo Shuddhi Samye Kaivalyamiti. Your mind is now completely pure. Nothing is touching the mind. And now it is similar to Purusha. This is a very, very, very interesting sutra number 56. Dear listeners, I'm sure by listening to our talks for such a long time, you have developed a keenness to understand. What is that keenness? Sri Ramakrishna very beautifully says, pure mind, pure intellect, and pure soul, they are one and the same. Shuddha Man, Shuddha Buddhi, Shuddha Atma. We have been discussing the junction where consciousness and mind meet. Mind has become completely free, because now it can get the knowledge of the entire universe, everything, even that which cannot be differentiated in one go. So naturally, mind is not interested, because you want to know something because you are curious about it. Why you are curious? Because it is covered. But now everything has been, once it has been uncovered, your curiosity goes away. You don't want to know because you already know. If you have watched a movie, especially if it's a boring movie, and someone requests you to watch it a second time, you will say, leave it. We get attracted towards things we don't know because we are curious. The veil of ignorance has been removed. Now you know. It's over. Now, there is a similarity between that mind and Purusha. They are different, of course, because mind can fall back. Purusha will not fall back. Pure consciousness will not fall. But there is a similarity. And because there is a similarity, they become one. And that is the moment of Kaivalyam. You become free. When the soul realizes that it depends on nothing in the universe, from gods to the lowest atom, Swamiji says, that is called Kaivalya. Free, absolutely free. You got power over everything. You know. Because you know you are free. What is purity? You see, purity is the key in Hindu religion, not obedience. In other religions, it's obedience or love. Christianity talks about love. Judaism talks about obedience. Islam talks about obedience. Hinduism talks about purity. Purity at all levels. Bhogavha, when you don't want to enjoy, this is purity. Now, when we are talking about Aishwarya, the glory and splendor, these are mere words. Ultimately, it's all about enjoyment. When we have knowledge, which we have been discussing, power, it destroys the relative ignorance that is there. But freedom doesn't come through that knowledge. It's a different thing altogether. So, once you have seen the entire thing, the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, it doesn't have power to create new sites for you. Game is over. It's like you're in a party and someone has put on the mask. And you know that person who is behind that mask. You don't get curious about that person. You know that. So actually, there is no gyan as such. Vedanta also talks like this. There is no gyan. There is kevalam. Actually, it is staying established in your true nature. This is what Vedanta also says. The main difference between between Vedanta and Yoga is that Yoga talks about multiplicity of souls. Vedanta doesn't talk. Otherwise, everything is same. So there is not something new that you get. You were watching something and you were identified with that. When you watch a movie, you get identified with the characters and their acts. The story is over. You go to a shop and you say, okay, show your wares. You saw their wares and you are not interested. I say, leave it. I don't need any of these. This is Kaivalyam. This is freedom. With that, we'll begin the fourth chapter named Kaivalyam, freedom. Thank you so much.